All right, so did you listen to me back in March when I said you should be doing Roth conversions like a crazy man? Got off the phone with a couple today in Florida that did listen to me. They converted $100,000, which had dropped down to $65,000 at the end of March, towards the end of March, and now it's worth back $100,000, and so they have $35,000 tax free. So now the question about Roth conversions is, and I'm getting this quite a bit now, is like, what do we do now? And that's a great question. All right, so here's the strategies for Roth conversions. All right, so look, I don't think Biden's going to win. But even if he does win, I don't think the market is going to get tanked. I just don't. I think actually, if anything, the market is pulling for Biden because the market, be it the Wall Street, not Main Street, Wall Street, they love cheap labor and they love cheap products from crappy built from China. They love that crap. They love the globalist economy, which is what Biden is all about. And again, Biden doesn't know who he is, but his keepers, they're all globalist. They're all in it for money. How do I think Biden got wealthy? It's not because he's a bright guy. It's because he knows how to politic, and he does, for sure. All right, Kamala Harris, same thing. All right. So these guys, they are globalist to the T. There's going to be huge corporation money going to them for sure. And if Biden wins, the market won't collapse. I just don't think so at all. Wall Street will be like, woohoo, party time is here. Let's party like it's 1999. All right, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. If Trump wins, I don't know. We shall see. I think at the end of the day, the market will appreciate the consistency, I guess, because they already kind of know what Trump's about. You know what I'm saying? Initially, they weren't so sure. I don't think the market will drop because of Trump being reelected either. So I don't think Biden's going to kill us in the market. I don't think Trump's, if he gets reelected, is going to kill us. I don't think the market is going to react negatively in either way. That's just what I think. All right, now Biden will push for a Green New Deal. That's a fact. A Green New Deal is bad across the board. Is it bad for middle-class Americans? Absolutely. Is it bad for shareholders in these large companies? Probably not. Good boy. So I'm not all that worried about the Biden election. I am worried about something else, though. And I don't know how 30 million jobs were lost. The GDP was down, annualized 35%. That wasn't in one quarter. It was about 12% in one quarter. But I don't know how just out of nowhere it just comes back like that. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. I get why it fell. I mean, when profits are tanking, when margins are dropping, I get the market decline. I get that. But how does it come back so fast? It doesn't make sense. I mean, I think like somebody was saying, it fell too quickly and it came back too quick. I think that makes sense. But 30 million jobs lost. All these businesses going kaput because the insanity of the lockdown. All these small business entrepreneurs lose everything. The economy is driven by consumer spending. 70% of GDP is by consumer spending. You can make an argument that the consumer spending was saved because of the unemployment stuff. I get that. But how about for the entrepreneurs who employ people, their businesses? I mean, these businesses, the tax revenue that is created by these businesses moving product, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I'm sitting there, I'm saying something is not right here. If these companies, these small businesses are just being shut down, how do these bars and restaurants, we went to a place the other day, and I was talking, my wife and I, Charlotte, without our masks on. Woo! I was talking to the waiter. I said, how are you guys making money? He goes, well, we're getting by. But I could tell he was he wasn't digging it. And it was a pretty high-end place because we took Maddie to a high-end restaurant for her 20th birthday. But I could just tell, he's like, yeah, he was like, dude. And I said, man. Yeah, but you could tell because people aren't going out. They're not consuming. They're not paying sales tax. They're not paying tips. They're just, all these things aren't being done. So if you have all these job losses, all these businesses going down, a lack of even if they open up the SEC, which they are for football, they're only going to have a quarter of the fan base there. The guys who hawk beers and stuff, I don't know if they can sell beers on campus, I don't know. But anyway, the salespeople who hawk the beers and stuff, there's no Atlanta Braves games. All this stuff has a big problem in the economy. So I'm not even so worried about Biden. I'm worried about the reality is that at some point there's going to be a price to be paid, because if the consumer spending is 70% of the GDP and all these people are out of work, out of jobs, or even making less income than they did before, where does the consumer spending come from? And I will tell you, to Trump's benefit, the payroll tax holiday is the number one thing you can do for stimulating the economy, without question. Without question. That is the number one thing to do to stimulate the economy. Payroll tax holiday. I think people on the left and right would both agree with that. It inherently makes sense. People who are working should be rewarded, right? We want to reward your labor. We don't want you sitting around eating Cheetos and playing Minecraft and get a big fat stimulus check. But if you are working, we're going to give you a stimulus check where you can keep your 6.2% for FICA, or even your 1.45 for hospital insurance. We're going to reward you for that, and you're going to spend that, and you're going to consume it. Now, you do not give stimulus checks to wealthier people because they don't actually spend it. They save it. This is pretty much not really debatable. I don't care what economist you are. So a payroll tax cut is great. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a great strategy. Giving unemployment benefits is fine, but those benefits are being reduced. And at some point, you just can't give people money not to work. That's not how the world operates. There's something wonderful in being a laborer, even if you're not getting paid that much. It creates something in your brain that says, this is how I get ahead by working. All right, so when is the piper going to be paid? You got to pay the piper, man. I don't know. But that's my concern about Roth conversions. So this is what I was telling this lady today. I said the S&P 500 is at 3380 right now. All right. If it drops 20%, so I don't know what's that, 600 points, I guess. 600, is that 33? 20, 600, or is that 800 points? All right, so we got 3,000 divided by 4 would be 750. Okay. So it'd be about 800 points. So if the S&P 500 drops 800 points, that's when you should do more conversions for sure. Now the problem with, and I'm assuming you did the conversions already when the market was down. I'm assuming you did that. So if you already got one conversion in the book for 2020, I wouldn't do another one unless the market falls 800. And the S&P, I'm not talking the Dow, I'm talking S&P. Falls 800 points. If it falls 800 points, I'd be doing more conversions. Now, if it falls 749, should you do it? Sure. But if it falls, 50 points, that's not a big deal. But if the market falls, the S&P 500 falls 800 points, I'd be doing Roth conversions like a crazy man. Absolutely. Even if in the same calendar year, for sure. A 20% decline in the market isn't extraordinary. It's not, but it doesn't happen every year. It doesn't happen that much. It's not extraordinary. It probably happens every 3 to 5 years or something like that. It's a big deal. I mean, that's a bear market, 20% decline. And sometimes they happen multiple times in a year, without question. But it's not extraordinary, but it is infrequent enough that if you get a 20% decline in the market, you definitely need to be doing Roth conversions, in my opinion. Now, if that doesn't happen by this year, we'll have to revisit at the beginning of next when to do Roth conversions. But for 2020, I'm waiting for it, again, assuming you've already got one in the books. Now, if you don't have one in the books, I don't see a benefit of doing it right now before 2020 is over. The reason for that is simple. The market has run up so high on such a soft economy. It doesn't make sense. Now, but Josh, don't you realize the interest rates are low? I'm the guy who's been arguing that for years. I get it. But it just seems to me if you were to convert now before the market, swoons a little bit, you'd be, let me put it to you this way. I was talking to these people today. If you converted at the end of 1999, you paid money on an account that 3 years later was worth $45,000. or 55% less than how I meant. So if you converted $100,000 at the end of 1999, by the end of 2002, going into 2003, your account was only worth $45,000. Does that make sense? So you were paying tax on a $100,000 account, and 3 years later, you only had $45,000 to show for it. So after taxes, it costs you, we'll just say $120,000 to convert $100,000, and by the March of 2003, is only worth $45,000. How long did it take to get back to $120,000? It took a long flipping time, probably 2014 or 15. So that Roth conversion during that market cycle was a big fat nothing. That was a bad move. Not only were you out the taxes, that did not come back because you had to pay tax on that money, which was gone for you to use, but your portfolio fell as well, and you didn't come back to even for a long, long time. I don't know if that's where we're going to be again. I don't know. I mean, because from 2000, from the 90s, we didn't have any real bear markets. We had a little bit in 1998, a little bit, a couple of down. We had a couple of instances where we had a down market, but not anything extraordinary for that whole decade. So that might just be a significant a breather of sorts. But we had nosebleeds, big time nosebleeds. Tesla nosebleed. Some of these Amazon nosebleed. I mean, PE ratios well into the three numbers. Seems like a nosebleed to me. Everyone had a reason back then to say they weren't nosebleeds either for those stocks. And then in hindsight, you're like, oh man, it had a PE ratio of 98. Of course, that's a nosebleed. Yeah, well, we got PE ratios of some of these stocks right now well above 98. And to say they're nosebleed, people will discount you. Well, that's what they did on those other companies back in the late 90s as well. They said, oh, they're not nosebleeds. They're the wave of the future. It's a new era. Everything's different. This time is different. Anyway, so going back to the Roth conversion stuff, that guy who did that in 2000 just did a bad job. Look, I've talked to people like that. When I brought up Roth conversions, they said, I'm never doing that again. And I said, and they told me the story why. I said, man, you're making a mistake. But let's go back now. We've had one bear market in 10 years, and we quickly came out of that bear market in literally 2 months' time. The bear hit us in 35 days, and the bear left us in basically 35 days. That's how extraordinary that time was. So essentially, for the last, going back to 2010, we've had a 35% decline, 19% decline, a couple small 15% declines, and that's it, man. So, seems to me the market has some explaining to do. And if I were to do a Roth conversion in 2020, before the market's declined, I just think you're making a mistake. Now, obviously, you can miss out some upside. I think that's worth waiting, because I'm assuming you did your Roth conversions back in March. I'm just assuming that. If it didn't, I would just suggest you think about waiting until 2021. All right, hope this helps. We'll see you